Great. So before we have David and Evan coming here, I would love to ask my guests, I will sit closer to you so I'm not that far away, to introduce yourselves.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Shirley. I am a freelance software engineer based in the San Francisco Bay Area. My concentration is data visualization in the web. So I use a lot of D3.js, data-driven documents, and React.js to do what I do. And a little bit about myself, I guess. I went to UC Berkeley for business. I majored in business, minored in computer science, and then came out doing big data. Like I went to a big data company, and that's kind of how I fell into data visualization. I'm just excited to be here to like show you what data visualization could do. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is John Wargo. I work for Microsoft. It's kind of hard to describe what I do. I'm a program manager. I work in the mobile space, but I've got about 35 or 40 years experience as a professional software developer, and I've done things around enterprise development, but like I said, the last 10, 12 years or so, I've focused on mobile. So as I kind of think through the topic for today, I think I have an interesting perspective because I'm probably the oldest person here. So I remember, none of you know this, but there was a time before there was Windows. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. And
Time, yeah.
Well, the funny thing is we have the command line now for all the developer tools, right? Well, when I started, that's all you had was the command line. So interesting twist for me. So.
Thank you very much. Shirley, let's start with you. I've read online that you've put an emoji on Obama's campaign. And Obama's face. Could you, share a little bit more about that and clarify that if that's possible? Yeah.
So
I can help with the connectivity thingies. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually work on. So I'm here because I gave a talk about how to use React and D3 together. But I also do a project. Okay, so this is my website. I can't.
Would you like to mirror view?
Yes, please.
Okay.
But I also do a project called Data Sketches with my friend Nadi Bremer. And what we do is we choose a topic.
Yes.
Ooh, yes, thank you. We choose a topic and we visualize it. So we go get our own data and we design, we ideate, and we code, and we write up our process. So this is called, I don't know how you found that one. That one's like a random one. So it was a project of 12 months, and so this is the project page called Data Sketches. I'm on the right-hand side, and Nadia is on the left-hand side. And so for the October month, we decided we wanted to do something about the election early on. And then as October approached, I was like, hey, Nadia, I don't think I want anything to do with this current election. But then I realized I did want to do something with the Obamas, because if you have a president coming in, you have a president going out. And no matter how you felt about his policies, I quite enjoyed their like TV presences. So I went and got every single late night interview there was of the Obamas off. And so this is basically, so this is every single one of them, grouped by the host. And this is them on the timeline. So you can see so this is already really interesting. So you can see that the Obama kind of talked a lot in 2009 when he first got office. He's actually the first sitting president to appear on late night TV. And then you can see in 2012, they picked up again.
That's not true. Bill Clinton played saxophone in Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
But was it while he was president?
Yes.
Really? Okay, then Wikipedia lied to me. Never mind then.
Sorry, I didn't mean to correct you for everybody else.
Yeah, okay, never mind then. Yeah. Then somebody somewhere on the, okay, there's, yeah, the internet lied to me. Not surprising. So, 2012, and then picked up again for the 2016 elections. And then you can see, here's all of the corresponding YouTube videos. And then the part that you're talking about is this part.
Yes.
Where
Yes.
Essentially what I did is I pulled all of the YouTube videos. I went and took a screenshot every single time somebody talked. So I went and got the captions I took a screenshot every single time somebody talked. I uploaded those screenshots to Google Vision API, who gave me back all of this information about like, how happy they are, or like if they're happy, if they're sad, if they're mad, if they're wearing a hat, and like how confident they are that that's true. And then so depending on that data, I went and mapped emojis onto their faces. So the funniest part about it is that the story, I feel like my favorite is that, hold on, let me find this one. So I think it's really funny because every single time Obama goes on to Jimmy Kimmel, like basically every single one of them is like Jimmy is smiling like really, really wide, and like Obama is just like neutral face. So like if you go through any of these, it's basically every single one of these is the exact same, like with Jimmy laughing and then like Obama just.
He's being presidential.
He's being very presidential. Thank you. Yeah. So this is the one you were mentioning.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know how you found this. This is like a random one. The one that people usually know me for is this one. It's called interactive visualization of every line in the musical Hamilton. And each of these dots are a different set of lyrics. And then you can go through and you can read my analysis. And then at the very end, I also have this filter tool, so that you can do your own analysis. So this is what people usually find me with. Yeah.
You see, we try to be different. And now I'd like to introduce the two speakers that we're running a little bit late, which is completely okay because we have an hour for the session, so that shouldn't be a problem. So on my right-hand side, I would like to welcome Evan Yu. And then David Nolen. And guys, if you can do a little bit of an introduction of yourselves, what do you do? What's your company doing, or what's your biggest achievement that you're right now working on?
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Evan Yu, and I currently work on. I'm the author of Vue.js, and currently work on maintaining the framework full time, and that's like made available through sponsors and our Patreon campaign, Open Collective. So it's completely community-driven and full-time open source, which has been very great experience so far. Before working full-time on Vue.js, I was at Meteor Development Group working on Meteor Framework, and before that, I was at Google Creative Lab, worked on a lot of interactive prototypes, internal experiments, which unfortunately I don't have much to show because like most of them are still confidential. But yeah, that's pretty much my story. Full-time open source, which is pretty fun.
That's a cool gig.
That's a good thing. David?
Hi, I'm David Nolen. I've been doing front-end sort of dev stuff with JavaScript since like 2005, so like 12 years of UI work. I was at the New York Times for 4 years, doing news apps in the newsroom. That was pretty cool. We were doing, JavaScript with Rails there. I now work for a company called Cognitect. I'm the lead developer of ClojureScript. So ClojureScript is a version of Clojure that compiles to JavaScript. It's just Clojure is a functional programming language for the Java virtual machine. I also worked on Datomic, which is also a Cognitect product, which is a sort of novel immutable relational database. I don't think there's anything else really like it. I talked a bit about that at the conference. And yeah, that's what I do. So I'm a software engineer at Cognitect, and we work with big companies, governments on hard problems.
Thank you, David. Today the topic is less about the technology, but more about the story, the personal story behind that. What driven you? What was the passion behind getting into the field that you're right now in, and what started the path that you're right now walking on with the engineering and technology. And I want to move our attention to John, because you've mentioned to me that you've written 6 books on mobile development and 1 book on soccer referee or football referee, which is a rather unique combination. So I would really be interested, how did you transition from being a soccer referee into engineering?
Oh, geez. Well, interestingly, the software engineering happened first,
Okay.
but the book on soccer refereeing happened first before the other ones. So I was a developer for a really long time. the first computer I had was a Texas Instruments TI-99-4A. Ever heard of that? Yeah, so, old guy. But anyways, I got involved in running software, but in the days where everything was proprietary. All the IDEs were for fee. All of the software that I used, you had to pay for. It was really kind of bizarre. But then I started working more and more in open source and doing things like that. But to the book thing, everybody wants to write a book. So everyone says, I'm going to write a book someday, and nobody ever does, right? How many of you said, I'm going to write a book someday? Yeah. How many of you have actually written books? Yeah. So what happened was I was a soccer referee for 22 years, and as I retired, as I walked out of my last referee meeting, I said to myself, I'm going to write a book about this. And then I actually forced myself to do it. And I took a week's vacation, I wrote a book, I self-published it, I sold, 10 copies. But what's interesting is I used to work for BlackBerry, and as I was leaving BlackBerry, I'm like, there aren't any books on BlackBerry development, I'm going to write one. And I went to the folks at BlackBerry and said, hey, do you know if any publishers are looking to have someone write a book? And they go, yeah, as a matter of fact, we do, let me introduce you. And when I got introduced to the publisher said, oh, you've already written a book? Cool, okay, I'll sign you up. And here's why. The biggest problem that publishers have is getting authors who sign a contract and get in advance and commit to a deadline. The biggest problem they have is actually getting them to write the book. So the fact that I already had a book under my belt, again, 5 copies sold, was enough to motivate this guy to give me a huge amount of money in advance. It wasn't. It would get me going there. But anyway, so that's how the two happened. So I was a software developer forever. The soccer referee thing was something I did just because I wanted to. I wanted to give back, right? Kind of open sourcing on the soccer refereeing side. But it enabled me to write my first mobile development book, which is the first book on BlackBerry development. But then from that point forward, it was easy. And then the best part of it is no one's looked at my resume in like 15 years. Because it's like, oh, you wrote the book on BlackBerry development? Yeah, you're hired. So they have absolutely no idea anything about the quality of me or my code or my books, but they know that I've written 4 books in Apache Cordova. I probably know Apache Cordova, you're hired. So the best advice I can give for you is make a name for yourself, and then no one will ever look at your resume ever again.
I think that's a great advice. I want to start with David on the other side. What's your story? How did you get where you're right now, and what propelled you there? Yeah.
So my story is a bit funny. So I don't have any formal education in CS,
Really?
computer science, no. My parents bought a computer in 1988, Apple IIgs. I learned how to program on that. And so my brother and I were just like hobbyists, like Pascal, C, C++. We were just completely self-taught. I went to school for film. Yeah, so I went to film school. And then, I don't know, around 2004, was back in grad school for new media at NYU. I was like, oh yeah, programming's pretty fun. And so I started doing programming, like getting back into programming, and then my first job, I actually got my first job when I was only halfway through grad school. I was working for Princeton University, working on a vital statistics US Census project. It was a mapping project. And yeah, that was like just, I got that on Craigslist. That was a job I found on Craigslist. Yeah. And the rest is history. It was just, I discovered that there was actually a connection between sort of cinema and UI work. The thing that I really loved is that, when you work on films, it was, I'm also a musician, but the point is you create an experience. You create an experience for the audience that you're interested in. And that was what I really liked about UI programming, and I stuck with that for a very long time. And I still do. I mean, that's mostly what I do. I do other things as well. But yeah, my path was very roundabout, very, very, very circuitous. Yeah.
Evan, what about you?
Yeah. I actually have a lot to like, your path resonates with me a lot, because I have a very similar situation where in undergrad my major was like art history, and then after graduating, like all my friends are like either doing econ or math or like just hardcore engineering, and I was like I was trying to look for a job for art history, and it's like, it's just like, there's no way, right? Like I wasn't, so I was born in China and went to US for college, and really I was just like, I didn't really think it through about like finding a job so that I can keep staying in US, because like obviously you need to get a H-1B visa so that you can keep working there, but like there's no art-related job that would give you an H-1B. So I was like, oh, what can I do? So I went to Parsons. There is a hybrid program like design and technology. I think it's pretty much similar to ITP.
Yes.
And so that was also the place where it kind of, so I used to play with Flash a lot in middle school, high school, but I played with Flash mostly because of like building these experiences rather than like the programming aspect of it. But after I got back into the program, so that program involved both programming and design and interactive experiences or just more artistic use of technology. It was really interesting and fun, but it also kind of got me back into like programming. And at that time, Google just like went out with these like Chrome experiments, and I was like, wow, it's crazy. Nowadays you can do these kind of like fancy interactive stuff in the browser with JavaScript. Like, time to learn the language. So that's how I got into JavaScript, and I just like bought the book, like the Rhino book, just read it through on my way on my commute, and it's like, cool, this is a fun language. So I started playing with it. I got some interactive demos, and yeah, so when I graduated, somehow I just like, someone at Google Creative Lab just like noticed some of my stuff, and they're like, hey, do you want to work here? I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. So that was my first job, actually. We did a lot of so Creative Lab is a pretty unique place where it's this mix of designers, filmmakers, creative directors, and creative technologists, and we did a lot of prototypes, experiments, super fast sprints on just like cramming out crazy ideas. It was super fun, and that was also the period where I kind of started to get into a bit more serious engineering side of things, figuring out how to build things better and faster. And that was the period where I started working on Vue just as a sort of personal experiment. And that was like more than 4 years ago. And Vue back then was just really just a small thing. Never had the intention to make it, say, like compete with React or Angular. But more people started using it. And I put it up on GitHub, and people started starring it. I was like, maybe there's something to it. And really, like, it's a long process. Like, my commitment to it is just like gradually increasing to the point where I felt like I should just figure out a way to do this full time. Otherwise, it's you know, I enjoy doing it, but like having to do it outside of a full-time day job is just like too much to be sustainable. And I was like, yeah, I'll just try this, because I saw Dan Abramov actually did a small Patreon campaign when he was working on React Hot Loader, and I was like, sounds like an interesting model. Maybe we can try it for Vue. And so when I started, I felt like so if you only rely on small like personal donations, it's probably not gonna be like actually sustainable for a full-time job. But luckily there was this company that I know their CTO, and he's a friend of mine, and they have this budget for open source sponsorship. They're like, we'll just sponsor you for 6 months for $2,000 every month so that you can get started. So that was like really a big help in the initial phase of just like giving me the courage to just take the jump and try to do it full time. And then it just went pretty well after that. And today it's fully sustainable, and I'm actually just having a pretty good life-work balance. I'm able to just work on open source work as an actual job and still have time to enjoy family and do other things. So that's great.
That's a great story and an interesting way how to get into open source, that you get this opportunity to actually jump the ship, as we would say, and try it for half a year, and that probably motivates you that, the time is running out and you need to start making a little bit of revenue of that, so it works nicely. Shirley, what about you? Like, how did you get into putting a emoji face on Obama? Like, where does it start to end there? Just, I'm really, really curious, yeah.
Art and history, yeah.
Well, actually, so I don't know how to follow all of that, because there's like so many, my story is like very similar to what everybody said, which is that I was I was not born in China, but my parents are Chinese, and we came to the U.S. and I studied business in undergrad, and I intended to go into finance. I intended to go into investment banking, and then junior year, the summer after junior, because that's a very Asian thing to do, money, and summer after junior year, I did go into an investment banking internship, and I realized how absolutely miserable I was there. And then that was I kind of had a quarter life crisis in college, where I realized that for 21 years of my life, I have followed exactly what other people told me I should be doing. So I went through school, high school, taking all the classes that people told me I should take, getting the grades that people told me I should take or get. And I went to the college that people told me were prestigious and I should go to. And then when I got to the college, I decided to study business. And in business, everybody wanted to do investment banking because that's the most prestigious thing. And I kind of just followed that wave along for all of that time. And I the moment at which I should have felt the most accomplished because I had landed myself a good internship at a good company. And I realized that I was absolutely miserable because I wasn't doing what I like, which is that when I was a child, I loved making things, right? I loved, I grew up partially in Japan, and they had a great arts and crafts program in elementary school, and I would do woodworking, and we would build things out of actual physical things. And I realized that I had lost that sometime in middle school and high school and college. And I was just chasing this empty figure of prestige and accomplishment and all of that. And then when I went to the investment bank, I realized all I was doing was entering things into Excel that why? You could write code to do this. So I wrote VBA code to do, I automated everything. So this thing that took the analysts 3 hours every Monday, I spent 3 hours my first week writing this VBA code and automated it. And then after that, every single Monday, I just kind of sat in the Bloomberg terminal, in front of the Bloomberg terminal, and then ran the script and pretended I was doing work for 2 hours while the script ran for 10 minutes. And I was just and that was when I realized that maybe I should be doing something else. And so I had started taking CS classes my junior year, my second semester junior year, just for fun, because I was almost done with my business major. So I was oh, it'd be fun if I get a double major or a minor or something. So I started taking CS classes. And then that summer I realized how much more I loved my CS classes, just because even though I wasn't making something tangible, I was still making something I was still building something instead of entering something into Excel. Investment banking is a service-oriented industry, right? So I'm not actually creating anything, I'm just helping push money around, which I think is really good for certain things, but it just wasn't what made me happy. So I went into this slight depressive spiral, and then I figured myself out by the end of the summer, and I was I'm gonna do I'm gonna do software. I'm going to graduate next year and do software engineering. And my parents were are you crazy? You went through 3 years telling us that you're gonna do finance and you're going to switch to computer science. Nobody's going to hire you. And I'm watch me. So I went and killed myself senior year, I think I did 3 of the hardest courses in 1 semester, and people are you're crazy, and I'm I know I am. And then my last semester in college, I went out and did all of those recruiting things, trying to get into these companies. You have to realize that I went to Berkeley, and everybody by then had all of my friends already had job offers at investment banks or Google or Airbnb or Uber or any of those big places, or they were going to med school or Yale or all of these big places. And I'm just over there being hi, my name is Shirley, can you please just give me an interview? I know I have no experience in software whatsoever, and I only have 2 semesters of coursework, but will you give me an interview? And most places didn't even look at my resume. But then I
write
actually...
a book. Yeah. You write a book?
I did not write a book. I didn't write a book. But what I did instead was I had friends that were like really supportive of me, and so they would like, you know, I would randomly, they would like tell me, hey, there's a panel of like industry leaders, you should go, bring your resume. And so like I remember distinctly the first full-time job I got it because right after the panel, one of the VPs said, hey, we're hiring, talk to me after if you're interested. So I like beeline, like ran to him right after like the panel, and like he was like, you know, in line to get food, and like I like went to him, I like was like, he like, you know, I'm Shirley, here's my resume. And then I realized that nobody else like went up to him. It was just me. But he like interviewed me on the spot, and then I got another interview, and then they gave me an offer. And I actually had another offer from another place where it was a very similar story. So what I realized was that nobody gave me an interview because of my resume. But what they did give me an interview for was when I took that initiative to tell them, hey, here's me, this is my story, I did finance, but I realized this isn't for me, and I really, 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 really want to do software, and it's because I'm in love with coding, and I realized this, and please give me a chance. And I know I don't have experience, but I'm being... Oh.
Well, you're good. You're fine. No worries. That was on me. That was on you. Yeah.
I know I don't have any experience, but I'm a quick learner, and they gave me a job. And that first one was Splunk. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but Splunk gave me a job as a front-end engineer. I had a great manager. He told me to go learn D3. He mentored me. I went to my second job where I led a project building a data visualization, like kind of framework, tool, UI, you know, from the ground up. I had a lot of responsibility. And then about a year ago, a year and a half ago, I realized that I had made a good amount of a name for myself in the data visualization community, that I could afford to go freelancing, because this is something that I had always wanted to try. I wanted that freedom for myself to kind of work and learn and make things that I'm passionate about instead of what somebody else is passionate about. And it's been about a year and a half, and it's been really great. And I just realized also that I didn't even realize this until I went freelancing, how ridiculous of an idea it is that somebody else is in control of my time, that I have to go to my boss to like ask for PTO and stuff. So then so that's actually another whole rant on freelancing that I shouldn't go into, but that's my story. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This should be I probably forgot to mention it, but a audience participation part as well. So so you're all here. You're listening to these guys and girls, and it would be great to get your questions and get your thoughts, and to answer them as well. We still have a half an hour for that. And in the meanwhile, I see that the front line surprisingly became the line of the speakers of the conference, which I would love to welcome here as well. So hi guys, say hi guys. And there's Tom, Gavin, Victor, Tiago, and Gabe. And these guys also gave a talk yesterday and the day before on their development. So we can also add them into the discussion if they're interested, and that's a resounding yes there, so I like that. And also ask them the questions. So hopefully the first one there, so the name of the game is there are no wrong questions, so ask anything, and the worst case I'm gonna say no. So that's fine.
And until someone asks a question, if I say something to you?
Sure, absolutely.
Does anybody have a question before I jump in and start stealing the mic? All right, well, the one thing I wanted to say as I listened to everybody talk, and as I saw everyone this week, recognize that all of us are doing exactly what we want to do, right? We have a day job, and someone pays us, and their boss kind of tells us what to do most of the time, but all of us have found something that's really, really interesting, and we've stuck with it, and we've found someone to pay us money to do it, right? That's the important thing. And I promised myself a long time ago that if I ever wake up in the morning and dread going to work, I'm not going to go to work anymore. And so every time I've been in a job where I've not liked what I've done or I've dreaded going to work, I've quit and I've gone on to find something else. And then that's another way that you get new skills or you pivot in your career and things like that. So I just wanted to add that based upon what everybody else said.
Joe, I think that's a very important thing, especially for the younger people here that are still looking and searching for the right start for where to go, whether it's investment banking or or anything else. Yes?
I actually want to.
Oh, give you the mic. Yeah.
Don't trip.
No.
So I just wanted to add that you hear about these sort of big tech employers, and it's it sounds very glamorous to work for one. But the reason that I am at Google is I was hacking on JavaScript in my spare time, and they hired me as a JavaScript engineer even though I was doing C++ every day, working on Linux systems and so forth. So they hired me because I was doing something that I gave a shit about, and that became the unusual, valuable skill at the time they hired me. So you guys absolutely should follow what you're interested in and not pursue some goal of something that just sounds like it would sound good. So
Well, and you can find a way to get someone to pay you to do what you want to do. If what you do is interesting enough or cool enough, you can find a way, right, Evan? You can find a way for someone to pay you to do what you want to do.
In that case, I would like to also add Tom into the discussion since you're already sitting here.
The story with that is they wrote LinkedIn.com, they wrote it as an Ember app, and then they were like, oh, we should probably hire some people who know how to use this to make it not so slow. But I think that actually leads to an interesting point, which is for people who are here, if you are not involved in an open source project, but I have so many deeply rewarding professional relationships with people that work at companies that are ostensibly competitors. I have so many great conversations with people who would be considered competition, but I feel like the luckiest person in the world because we're all working in this very exciting space and sharing ideas collaboratively. We get paid very well. So many of the people that I've enjoyed working with down the line, we did become coworkers, that we did become fellow employees. And for my career, every good job I've ever had has been due to people I've met through open source. So if you're not involved, I really recommend it, if only for the money it will eventually lead to.
So, do open source, be rich. Okay, I like that one. So let's do a poll. Who of you is involved in an open source project and your contributors?
Well, no, start with who's using it.
So who's using open source? Thank you very much. Okay, that's a good one. And who's
Giving back.
what about giving? You want to do this?
Little voice in his ear.
And who's contributing to some of the open source projects? Yeah.
Oh, no, it should be the same number of hands.
Yeah.
It should be the same number of hands.
So for a bit, I actually felt inferiority complex because I'm obviously not like Evan or Tom, or I'm not contributing to the actual source code of open source libraries, right? But can I just say that I think it's just as cool if you're using these open source libraries and you're either contributing with your projects, you're putting it out there, you're making your own projects open source, you're inspiring others to show them what you can do with these libraries. I think that's cool too. I think that could count as contributing to open source also. So I feel like if you're using, then just like you said, you should also keep your hand up for that.
Yeah, so answering questions on forums is giving back. Writing the documentation is giving back. Identifying an issue and submitting it to the team to fix, that's giving back. Every one of your hands should be up as contributing to open source, because it's self-fulfilling, right? If you're using it, you need to help make more of it. Sorry, that's what I mean.
No, that's good.
Questions?
Exactly, guys. Questions. Yeah.
I've taken over, by the way. I'm in charge.
I can see that. No, feel free to take the mic. It's okay. So, do you have questions? I'm sure you have questions. Don't be shy.
Just give them a
Yes.
I do have a question.
Fantastic. I will run to you.
I'd rather have the mic because
It's fine.
too much bigger.
Bratislava is known for Bratislava,
Yeah. So hi everyone. Just wanted to ask a question about. I know we're in a university, and I have a university background as well. But more and more you see these big, how do you say, Twitter personalities and people in the open source space that don't have a computer science degree, and they're very successful nowadays. Do you think? Hi. do you think that it's still mandatory to go through computer science? Do Do you think more and more companies around the world will start seeing that professional experience and contributing to open source is maybe a better way and a more fruitful way?
So I have a degree in physics. So
Physics is almost computer science. It's like computer science on paper. That's
we didn't
fine.
see the computers we had back then.
Well, my story's not as good as Tom's, but so my degree's in filmmaking. Getting a computer science degree is a much more efficient way to learn computer science than learning it on the job. So if you're in a computer science program, that's good. It'll save you a lot of time, but it's not required. Tom's story's better.
My degree was in criminology, which turns out is really not that different from hunting down a bug. But I think there's a little bit of confirmation bias in some sense, because I think people who are on the speaking circuit and have a passion for creating things tend to have a bias for action, and I think it's less that those people are I think they're just impatient people who don't have the patience to sit through a 4-year university course, possibly. This is painting with a broad brush. And I don't think that's necessarily a good personality trait. But that said, I know for me, it certainly has been, I felt a loss. I felt like I had some catch up to do because I didn't have it. And if you have the ability to go through that course, I would recommend it. It definitely would have come in handy.
Let's ask the speakers right here.
Well, I don't. Here's the thing: having a computer science degree, like you said, is a streamlined way to get to it, which is great. But if you were able to analyze all the open source projects or all the different solutions we have out there, how many of them came to be because the person had an external perspective that a computer science degree would not have given them? So, Evan, did the view come from some computer science thing, or you were just musing about how hard it was to solve a problem, and you applied some external view to it and solved it, right?
External view, nice.
Oh, that was not an intended pun.
I'm just gonna say really quick that I think there are some things that I'm really grateful for having that minor. I'm really grateful for having the computer science foundations, that theory, just because even though I don't use it in my day-to-day, it still helps me, it helps inform my decisions on say performance, on memory allocation and all of that. That I'm just really grateful to have had before I went into full time. Having said that, I think it's I think a really great thing. I also agree on the confirmation bias, because I feel like a lot of the people that are on the speaker circuit and stuff are really, really passionate about what they're doing, precisely because they went through life doing something else. Then they found computer science and realized how much they loved it. And then they want to really share it. And I think, but there's thousands and millions of people that went through computer science, and they like their job, and they are working at really great jobs, doing really great things that aren't out there speaking, but that's just as great, especially if they're really happy with it. I think it's just like Tom said, maybe we just have a little bit more impatient of a personality, but I think to me the most important thing is that if you haven't done a computer science degree and it is something that you want to get into, I think the self-learning part is really, really important, because you have to teach yourself all of the things that you didn't get to in college or in some sort of a course, a boot camp or something. And the second thing is that the crushing amount of imposter syndrome when we start out at the beginning. I don't know, I feel like this is a very common theme, but when I first graduated and went into a full-time dev position, the amount that I drove myself to learn everything that I can, because I felt like I was so behind, because I felt so stupid amongst my coworkers for not knowing operation OS systems, or knowing more algorithms, or and I feel like this is a very common trait for people that didn't study computer science. So I think those are the two things that, if you do decide on that path, be prepared for.
So for me, my major was art history. I took 2 computer science classes. One was completely dummy intro, everyone just writing HTML and CSS, and the final project was just make a website. And the second one was more data structures and algorithms in Java. And back then, I had a hard time just going through that course, because at that time I had like no intention to pursue a career that has anything to do with software engineering. And to me, I was just trying to fulfill the curriculum requirements. So like, I just have to pass this course, and what the hell is this like linked list thing that I have to flip or whatever? And but like, it's only after I started doing more creative programming in the browser, and sometimes I have to actually use some of these things that I learned before, and I go back to it. I'm like, this now looks much more interesting than like 2 years ago, you know. And now if I open the old textbook that I had when I was in college, like it's actually something that I could sit there and just keep reading it. But back then I had to like force myself to like go through a whole night. I just went to like 5 pages or something, and I think it's really like, for me personally, I'm an extremely like goal-driven and end result-driven. So for me, what actually pushes me through to like learning things is really like, I set something in my mind first. I want to build this thing. I want to build, say, a website. I want to build this like special visual effect. I want to build this framework, and then I set out to analyze the thing and figure out like what are the things that I'm currently lacking, and I just go there and learn it. And I think that's the way I have progressed so far. And I don't think like, so the cool thing about a computer science degree is you have someone who's being far deeper in the field to design the curriculum for you and sort of lay out the things that kind of helps you progress through the more advanced concepts. Though that saves a lot of time. But if you didn't have a strong like passion or goal that's driving you to go through those things, you might be like wondering like, am I really like in for this? But I think like, once you have found something that you want to achieve or do, and then you somehow connect that with, you know, computer science is really just the thing for you to get there. And then I think it all just makes it much easier for you to just, it becomes natural for you to crack all those hard problems and learn these things. And it doesn't, like, at that point, it really doesn't matter if it's like you're doing it in school or doing it on your job. I think the most important thing is you have the enough mental power motivation to drive yourself through that process.
So, I mean, one thing that I think is that, I mean, it's also really important to understand, at least in my experience, that software engineering and computer science are two very different things, and I'm not really convinced you can learn software engineering in school. I think you just build systems. People are still trying to figure out how to build systems well. I don't think it's something that's well understood. I think there are some general principles, but we're constantly revisiting those, so that's a whole separate thing. But I think that computer science is super important. I didn't have a CS degree, and so I definitely had to learn it on the job. And you know, yeah, okay, 12 years later, okay, I know a few things, right? But that took me a long time, and I certainly think that you're at an advantage if you're doing this in school. I also will say that, like, yeah, okay, it turns out that actually there's quite a few sort of creative-oriented people in this room that got into computers. But you know, the CTO of my company, Rich Hickey, I mean, he has a master's in CS, and I think having that sort of you know, training and sort of educational background has greatly informed his ability to design his programming languages and his databases. And I know just from when I travel into conferences, a lot of my favorite speakers, I mean, I love creative stuff. I'm a musician. It's like I love seeing creative people on stage. But some of the most inspiring people to me when I go to conferences are people with extremely deep sort of theoretical knowledge in their domain in CS. So, yeah.
Just to add a little bit to that, I do have a CS degree, but I don't do CS anymore. I'm a business developer. I do sales, but it helps me to, you know, I think that all the STEM fields are great to have clarity of mind and to understand structure and to know that, you know, this goes before this, and it just gives you a little bit of a structure of how to think in the world a bit better than if you only have a business degree. I think like that. Yeah. We have 10 minutes until the end of the panel, so let's get cracking through a couple of the questions. I think we have time for 2 or 3 if we're good. Yes. No, I will be running. Okay. Here we go.
Hi guys, my name is Lucas. I'm from Brazil, but I live in Lisbon actually. So my question is, how was your first presentation, international presentation? You was shy, you was runs okay? That's it.
So it's more about stage fright, or how to manage the first couple of conferences or the first talks.
Yeah, that's it.
I haven't given a presentation for 9 years.
You did one yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Except for the one yesterday. Until the one yesterday, I hadn't done a large scale presentation. So I had another kid, and I was very busy, and I couldn't do them. But what I did was run a users group for a long time. So I started and ran the Los Angeles Java users group in 1996, and I ran it for 8 years. So I was very comfortable speaking to small groups, and that translates reasonably well. So if you've done your talk preparation, if you're interested in giving a talk, talk to your local users groups, try it there, give it, travel around a little bit. The great thing about Europe, not so much Brazil, but the great thing about giving talks in Europe is, you've got a lot of municipalities and localities that are quite diverse within a short travel range. So you could give a lot of talks at a lot of users groups about any subject that you're interested in. I know from running one that they're always happy to have a speaker who's like enthusiastic and responsible and will show up on time. So that's a really good way to practice if you're interested in giving talks.
We'll show up on time. Yes.
Let's go here with David.
I do a lot of speaking, but I still get stressed out when I do my talks, and so like for me, it's just I just rehearse a lot. Like I just rehearse a lot. Whenever I'm about to do a talk, it's like I'm in my hotel room, like practicing the talk for like 6 hours. So yeah, so I'm still stressed out. So I don't know. For me, it hasn't changed. But yeah, I would say like how I started was talking to very small groups. Like maybe there's only 5 people in the audience, and you're still gonna get scared. And it's good practice. Like give a presentation to your friends. Get five of your friends together and like, hey, have you checked out GraphQL? You don't know anything about it, so let me just do a presentation about GraphQL or some other open source thing that you're excited about. That's definitely how I got started.
Yeah, so for me, I think I started speaking at conferences like last year. I've been doing quite a few since then, but for me, I'm not sure if I started talking to small meetup groups first or at conferences first. To be honest, like I've done way too much last year. but I've done both big ones and small ones, and the small ones are definitely more a more intimate setting, which like you're less pressured and a more like friendly environment to get you started. So if you have like this big pressure for talking to a big audience, you should definitely start with a smaller group first. And sometimes when I prepare my talks, it's like there's this technique called like rubber duck programming, right? So you talk to a rubber duck about what you're thinking, and when I'm like thinking about my talk, I look at my slides and talk to a rubber duck, like explain it, right? Like we're doing this and this. So once you've gone through that process, like it helps you like identify the holes and problems in your current talk preparation, and it kind of helps you refine that. And I think the same technique applies to like preparing talks. And for me, the biggest, like the most stressful part is really just the preparation stage, where I'm like trying to get to a slides where I feel like it's coherent, not like making really abrupt like redirections on topics and stuff. But really, like once you stand on the stage, the thing is, it's like you're in autopilot mode, right? Most of the time you're just like, it's like when you stand on the stage, there's no turning back, right? And it's like,
awkward,
yeah, you just have to do it no matter what. Like you can't just say, I'm sorry guys, I'm not doing this talk now. But like, so it's going to be stressful definitely for the first time. But like after the first one, I just started to feel like more and more used to it, and it becomes more. So the actual speaking becomes the easier part. And the hard part is making sure you come up with like meaningful content in a coherent fashion. Yeah.
Let's do short answers, so we have time for one more question.
Yeah, so I think the content part is super important. I think the autopilot let me kind of just qualify it by saying you can only go on autopilot if you practice like lots. So like practice and like, you know, memorize the points. I always memorize my lines, not word for word, but I actually, so the thing that actually helped me the most in my public speaking is actually writing down a script. So like I used to only just do bullet points of what I want to say, and then I realized, and then I would say like a lot of and I would have pauses, and then when I started writing out a whole script of like exactly the wording that I want, and then I don't memorize it word for word, but then I can still fall back to it if there's something that's particular, like an idea that's particularly difficult for me to express on the spot. I have this script that I can fall back on to like be able to just autopilot through it that I've already memorized. So that's the thing that's helped me the most. And then the second thing is that I agree completely. The content is king. So the content is definitely the most important. I found that it's always, I think the most successful ones I've done are the ones that have a good story arc, usually I talk about some sort of journey I've gone through, so it's easy for me to have a story arc. And then to have a story arc, and then I always try and like I try to make the audience laugh a little bit sometime during it, and then I try to make it so that there's at least something that they can hopefully take away. So those are the things.
So my first international presentation was in the Netherlands, and I did the whole bullet point thing. And the guy I was working with forced me to replace every page with bullet points with a picture. And then I quickly learned that presentations are short stories. It's a series of stories. So you don't read the slides. I don't prepare my script. I just tell a story around each one and let people get what they want from the screen and let them hear what I want from the story. But you have to bring your personality to it. Right? You have to force yourself to have fun, and when people see and hear your enthusiasm, they enjoy your sessions a lot more.
Just two comments on that. Since I'm Slovak and we come from a post-Soviet bloc, I would call it, the Eastern European parts. We are traditionally very bad at presenting, like awful, like very, very bad. Because the first time you actually present is when you enter high school, and that's the first time essentially you get a real presentation that you need to give, compared to the Western Europe where you have a little bit more of stage time during your studies. So there are some associations that can help you with that, like the debate association or young physicist tournaments or whatnot, like places where you can debate and play and discuss on a friendly level and get accustomed to talking on stage. To help me a lot in the past. And one comment is that if you're not nervous, you're not making enough an effort for the talk. Because if you're nervous, that means that okay, you really mean it. You really want to be there. You really want to give the talk. Otherwise, it's just another talk. We have time for one more question, so let's make it count. Yes.
Just a short one.
That's okay.
Good, we'll give you short answers.
Yes.
What's your worst job interview experience?
That sounds like a great question for a long answer.
I don't think it was for any of the tech stuff I did. It was probably like at a coffee shop job or something, like more than 15 years ago.
I honestly didn't have any like super bad interview experience, but like probably most because I just turned down the thing if I like realize if there's some bad signs going on, or it's also because I consider myself pretty lucky on my career path. Like I got my job at Google because they just approached me. I didn't really go through interviews to work at Meteor because they already know my work on Vue, and I gave a presentation and they gave me the job. And that was, but I did go through an interview at Facebook and I got rejected. That was, I think that was when I just was out of school. And back then, honestly, like my JavaScript skills sucked. And I failed to do like, just explain what prototypal inheritance is. And I was like, dude, I just totally blew it. But it wasn't a bad experience in the way that I was interviewed, but it's more like I was just really not prepared for it. Other times, later on, it's mostly like we got into something and people are just, I can sort of feel the way the company how they treat the interview process in the very early stages. And if I feel like it's not the type of thing I want to do, I just like
Just
shut
reject
off.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Just short answers or very funny stories?
Very short and sort of funny. My very first technical interview, that senior year, my very first one, I was really nervous, and the interviewer asked me a question, an algorithm question that had to do with the alphabet, and I started out with, so since it's the alphabet, n is equal to 27. And I was like, wait, 27? Wait, how many letters are in the alphabet? 25, 26, 27, 26? And then I never heard back.
If you're sick, reschedule the interview, because I did one with a cold one time, and it was the worst interview I ever had. I didn't get the job.
I did a phone interview while I was driving for a major game studio in Los Angeles. Phone screen is usually quite like, is this guy even worth bringing in to talk to? So, and the interviewer was asking me like bit shifty questions, and I was working at DreamWorks Animation writing graphics software at the time, but these are like low-level bit shift questions, and I always bring those things up in a Python interpreter and try them out. And I completely crashed and burned in this phone screen. It's like the entry-level interview, crashed and burned, Google hired me 6 months later. So not every interview is indicative of your skill level or your career path. It's just sometimes you're not the right person for the job, and I was legitimately not the right person for that job.
Great. And on this positive note, I would like to thank you all for participating in this morning's talk and discussion called My Story. Thank you very much for listening, and hopefully you're going to have a rest of the day filled with good workshops and content that you like. Thank you.